Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Donna Mitchell with Pivoting to Web3 podcast. And I have today as our guest, Jonathan Green. And Jonathan Green has such an invaluable background. I know he really offers the ChatGPT, Midjourney, Leonardo. He's involved with quite a bit on the AI side and some other areas. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and we'll start off with my normal question. How did you get in this space? But first, tell us, who are you, Jonathan? What are you really about?
Sure. I'm someone who's always dabbled in entrepreneurship without realizing it. I never thought I could start my own company until I just lost my job in a blizzard and realized I didn't want someone else to be able to do that to me again. Once is enough. And I just took control of my destiny way back in 2010. And since then, I built a couple of different companies, tried a couple of different things, and found my way online. Now I live on a small tropical island in the South Pacific with my wife and 4 kids. And really, I live a life that's better than I ever thought it would be. Obviously, there's still ups and downs as there are in everyone's experience. But yeah, now my passion is for AI and really the practical application of AI because there's so much information. It's easy to be overwhelmed. And it's my job to kind of tell you not so much what you need to learn, but all the stuff you don't need to learn so it can narrow it down, kind of push away the overwhelm.
So that sounds very enticing to me because we just finished talking about you and I probably getting together to help cut away a lot of the AI information and how it gets very overwhelming on which AI to use when. But for my listeners who are coming into this sector of AI, starting to use it and thinking about it or scared of it, what made you really motivate and say, okay, I'm going to do this and utilize the AI? Was there something you saw, someone else you met, or an experience that took place? You just wanted to start saving time and make more money?
So I've been using other AI tools for a couple of years, but I had always said these are not ready for prime time. The best you can get is a rough draft. I would never publish a blog post written by an AI is up to maybe December of 2022. That was my belief because that was the quality. As someone who writes books and writes my own blog posts, just have to maintain a certain level of quality or it's not useful to someone. So I just saw just a flood of YouTube videos and tutorials about ChatGPT. And I was like, oh, I'll give this a crack. And every time I would watch someone make a tutorial, I would say to myself, I could do this better. And I happen to have just an affinity for the way ChatGPT thinks and prompts and communicates. So it's very natural to me. Whereas for many people, some tools, they seem weird, right? Like some things seem counterintuitive to some people and others. Mm-hmm. And I go, oh, this one just syncs up with the way I think. So every time someone says, oh, ChatGPT can't do this or ChatGPT can't do that, I go, oh, I bet I can get it to do that. Or I bet I can do it faster. Like I grew up watching this TV show, Name That Tune, where people would say, I can name that song in 12 notes.
Yeah.
Someone else, I can name it in 8 notes. So I approach it like that. I go, they're doing it in 12 prompts. I bet I can do it in 9. I'm always looking for that efficiency. And I'm always trying to get it down to one prompt for every task. So I'm like chasing the perfect prompt or the perfect question to get the perfect result. That's really what I'm always striving towards.
So for those listening that haven't used it, think about something you did recently and what was the prompt or something close that you can remember what the prompt was and why you chose that prompt and wrote it that way. Because right now for myself, I have been utilizing ChatGPT and a few others like an assistant. I kind of talk to it. Please give me an award-winning da-da-da-da-da, or please give me a tone and approach that's this or that. And how do you really go about it? Or choosing a prompt? Yeah, how do you talk to it?
So here's the biggest shortcut. This is the game changer, is I always start with a question. The way ChatGPT is designed, and it's a bunch of boring science, but basically it won't tell you that you've asked a bad question. It will never tell you that you've asked a bad question or that doesn't have enough information. It will always give you an answer based on a limited data set or based on bad information, garbage in, garbage out. But if you ask a question, it will then tell you. So what I always start with is, I want to do this. What information do you need? So today I was working on a sales presentation and I said, I'm working on bullet points. I just always takes me so long to write the bullet points for each different module for a course or each different bonus. It's just part of the job, right? You have to do it. And so I said, I want to write the bullet points for this course. What information do you need from me? to write bullet points. And it will write like 6, and I'll choose the 3 that are the best. And then it asks me 7 or 8 questions. So that's my most common prompting structure is I tell it what I want and I say, what information do you need? And from there, sometimes I'll answer it and then I'll answer all of its questions and I'll go, do you need anything else or do you have enough information? I'm always giving it permission to ask for more information so that I get a better output. The main reason people get a bad output is they give a bad input. If you give it a command, it has to answer that command, those constraints. Even though it knows it's giving you a bad answer, it has to follow the rules. And so that's one of its biggest rules.
And you just offered me some additional insight in that part right there. And I might change the way I approach a few prompts myself with just the little bit you said. Thank you so much. So when you're utilizing AI, and I think you said Leonardo. I'm not familiar with Leonardo. What is Leonardo? I think everybody hears
Sure.
ChatGPT. What's Leonardo?
Yeah, Leonardo is just another image generator. It's the same as Midjourney. It's the same as Stable Diffusion. There's a bunch of tools. Basically, there's 2 types of AI. There's text AI and image AI. Write me a blog post, make me the pictures to go with the blog post. So Leonardo is just one of the tools inside of that image generator collection.
So when do you use it? When you're doing presentations? How do you use the image generation? Let me say that again. How do you
Sure.
use the image generator? And how do you utilize it in your different types of work?
Sure. The cover of my book, ChatGPT Profits, was created by an image generator. Every image on my blog now comes from an image generator. All my new logos come from image generators. When I'm writing a presentation and I'm adding images to the slides, they come from an image generator. I'm creating one of those 3D product shots, like a 3D picture of a box, it's like software box, so it looks like more valuable. The image on it comes from an image generator. All my social media posts, image generator. I've been doing a big push on Twitter and LinkedIn the last couple of weeks to really grow my followings on there. And I realized that tweets is over. Every single tweet that goes viral either has a video or an image with it. Like the idea of just a text only tweet doing well, it's very, very unlikely. It's very, very hard. The odds are much more in your favor if there's a visual component. So I just start creating images to go with every single social media post, right? Because I'm trying to put a lot of content out quickly. So all of those things are where I use image generators. Basically anything you would use a stock photo site for, I just use an image generator because I can get 100% unique image that only I have that's completely different. So people haven't seen it before.
Okay, I've got a lot to catch up on in this area. I'm really in the blockchain world, so I'm really glad that we have you as a guest today. So with the image generators and the different AIs, there's generative AI, and there's also another AI. I don't remember it exactly. Help me understand in the audience before we go into something else. What are the differences in the AIs? From the tech standpoint, maybe let's start there.
Sure. Basically, there's 2 components to an AI. There's the way you train it, the way you teach it, the rules, and then the information you feed it. So data sets are usually measured in the letter B, which stands for billion. And that's usually 1 billion pieces of information equals 1 terabyte, because 1 terabyte is 1 billion bytes. I don't know why it's not T's. It would make more sense that way, but it's just the way it is. So there are thousands of AIs right now. Every single day, there's a new open source AI model that comes out. And the way you measure it, they range from 7B up to around 180B. So some are quite small and some are quite big. And there's a constant push to see how can I make a lean AI so it doesn't use as much computer power? Because the larger the data set you feed it, right, the larger its database, the slower it's going to run because it has to search the larger database and still get really good responses. So that's what's happening in the open source world. And that's where we can kind of get a sense for how the data works. What happens when you ask a prompt of any of these text generators? What it really does is searches its database and say, based on similar questions in the past, what's the most likely answer? That's really all it's doing, is guessing based on a really, really large data set. It's not thinking. It's just really, really good guessing. That's why when you ask it something that is not on the internet, it's not good at kind of that type of thinking. It's not good at that type of creativity. So that's why there are limitations. It's very bad at research. It's very dishonest because it never wants to disappoint you. So it will lie rather than upset you, just like my kids, my 3 and 5-year-olds. It's the exact same mindset. So that's why people get in trouble, because they go, ChatGPT lied to me. And it's because we asked the question. So that's the best way to understand it, is that every tool has different strengths and weaknesses. And so you want to use the right tool for the right situation. So you do want to build up a toolkit of 3 or 4 pieces of software. So you have something that's good for each different use case.
So what do you recommend in those 3, 4 pieces of software?
So my favorite tool, the tool I use the most for research, is called Perplexity AI.
Mm-hmm.
Perplexity is really good for research. It basically was designed to solve the ChatGPT problem. So Perplexity always shows its sources. You can tell it where to get data from. Only use peer-reviewed journals, only use YouTube, only use big magazines or big respected newspapers. And it lets you gather up to the date information. So we'll pull everything current up through today. So whereas ChatGPT has a cutoff of over 2 years ago, Perplexity is great for research. So I use it for that constantly. So for example, I was doing research today on different salaries or times. I was also looking for what people were paying web designers 30 years ago. I was writing an article about that, about how that was an old gold rush where people had lots of money for websites 30 years ago. No one knew good from bad. Very similar to now with AI. I was writing about that, and I used Perplexity to find a good article about what things cost 20 years ago, some good analysis, because I couldn't find any information. So it's really good for research. It's a much better research tool than Google. It's much more up to the date. So for research, I love Perplexity. It's free. They do have a paid version. It's $20 a month, and that's a little bit faster, but I never needed it. I'm waiting. I know that eventually I'll go for the paid version because I'm a big fan, but so far the free version has been so aces. So that's my favorite research tool. For me, my favorite tool, my big workhorse, is ChatGPT. That's just because I was a ChatGPT user first. ChatGPT, I've really mastered it. So I really get great results. I have really great prompts. I have a bunch of prompts that are kind of in my toolkit that I use a lot with it. I use that for 90% of what I do. It's always open. I use it for creating social media posts, for editing, for creating show notes for podcast episodes, all of the different things I do throughout the day, from math equations to cleaning up lists, anything that's repetitive or that's a little bit mind numbing, always going to ChatGPT to do that repetitive task. And for anything that's creativity and that I do a lot of, like, I have to write the descriptions for 20 different t-shirts, I'm definitely going to ChatGPT to do those things, because I come up with different creativities. I use it for a lot of copywriting, a lot of product design, a lot of strategy things, and kind of bouncing ideas. It's not always good, right? Sometimes it has dumb ideas. That's why it still needs me, because that's why I always ask for, like, give me 10 bullet points. I'll use 3. Give me 10 headline ideas. Headlines. So that's really part of the process. It's not the assumption that it's always going to be better than me, because it's not. But me plus ChatGPT is definitely stronger than me by myself.
So you mentioned Perplexity and ChatGPT. There's one more.
Yeah, the next tool I love for image generation, I think the best one for me is Midjourney. I just use that the most. Leonardo is the most powerful, but it's also got the steepest learning curve. And I do 90% of my image generation with Midjourney. It's my workhorse.
Okay.
Dolly, which is built into ChatGPT. ChatGPT just added an image generator inside. Last week, I was just hating it. Then I tried something new today, and it gave me a really good result, which was very interesting to me. So I'm kind of changing my opinion. I also like the Bing. There's a Bing image generator, which is free. Everyone gets free 25 images a day. That's kind of my favorite tool right now for making logos. There's always a different thing I'm playing around with, but I've really found the Bing image generator is supposed to be the same one inside ChatGPT, but they don't act the same, which is kind of frustrating because it's the same tool, but it's not giving the same results. But those are the main tools that I use, is that collection. And then there's other things I'm always testing, but it really comes down to those. And the only tools I pay for that I think are worth the pay, I think ChatGPT Pro at $20 a month is a great investment. I think I pay $12 a month for Midjourney. It's worth it. And then somewhere between 10 and 20 a month for Leonardo as a backup image generator. So I have two ChatGPT accounts, one for me and one for people on my team to use. Same thing. I have two image generators so that I can have two running at the same time. Those are really my favorite tools right now.
Hmm. Well, you've given me a lot to think about, but there's a lot of what you said that I'm on the right page for ChatGPT. That is my workhorse for everything that I'm doing right now, but I'm starting to expand. But if you don't mind, I'd really like to go back to what happened that you started hating that week, or what happened, or what was the input of the prompt, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of the situation where it wasn't too nice of a time for you with AI. They always hear the good stuff. What happened? Can you share a little
Oh,
bit?
yeah, sure. I was doing image generation last week, testing because I'd done some logos with the free version of Dolly 3, the version
Yeah.
that's in Bing Image Generator. Then I finally got access to the paid version and it wasn't giving me the same results. And it was giving me
Oh.
just really weird images. And the images did not look high quality. They were looking like just kind of not very good. And I was like, what
Mhm.
is happening here? And I was just thinking there's something going on because I'm not getting the same type of results, not giving the consistency because I can just get such beautiful images out of Midjourney. So I was frustrated with that. Other things, I'll give you another example of something more frustrating is that I have a prompt to turn ChatGPT into me. So ChatGPT has read my book, Serve No Master, my book from 2016. So it knows my writing style, it knows my
Oh,
personality,
okay.
knows a lot of my background up
Mhm.
until I guess I'm 35 or 36, 30, 36. And I was editing I had to edit ChatGPT Profits. So I'm like, well, you're me, now edit the book. And the problem is, and this is why I don't want a twin brother, is that we turned against each other. So I got into a lot of fights because I was like, stop rewriting and just edit, just clean up the text. It's already great. Okay. You don't need to rewrite it, but this is what I do. So this is exactly what I do. When I'm editing, I tend to do tons of rewrites as well. I do the same thing where it kind of goes into mission creep mode. So it was doing all the things that I actually do that are annoying about myself. And it's like a reflection on the worst parts of your personality. We got in this huge fight because it's two Jonathans. Of course, we're going to fight with each other. We would never be friends. So that's something else that like was driving me kind of up a wall. And sometimes the third thing that can happen is sometimes something works today and then it doesn't work tomorrow. So they have done a lot of nerfing to ChatGPT over the last 6 months, which means
Mhm.
like its effectiveness, replacing its strength with like Nerf bullets, like softening it. Because every time people do something naughty with ChatGPT, they have to add a limitation. So actually, it's when people say it's not as good as it was, that's factually correct. Its result quality is dipped by like 30%. That's why they're releasing a new version now, which they put a V on the end of it. And there's some modes that activate a smarter mode of it. So they're kind of testing a lot of things in the background, but
Mhm.
there's a constant race between bad actors trying to use AI for evil and everyone else, right? It's like 1% of people always do try and think, what's the worst thing I can do with this? So that's what's kind of happening in the background when you're going, it's not working today when it did yesterday. So things like that. But that's kind of going to shake itself out over the next 6 months to a year, and that kind of will sort itself out. But you're always going to run into it worked yesterday. Why isn't it working today? Until you go back and look and go, oh, I asked the question in a different way.
Okay.
And then you can start to realize how significant word order is to an AI.
So, Jonathan, you kind of walked into my standard question. And
Okay.
one of my standard questions are, what keeps you up at night? What do you worry about or think about that's on the bad acting side? Or what concerns you about AI or the different AIs? Or as much as you know about AI, is there anything that kind of rolls around as like, I hope this don't happen? Or I'm just kind of curious.
Sure. So I think there's the perpetual race between sword and shield. People make a better sword, someone makes a better shield. Someone makes a better bow and arrow, they make a better shield or better armor. It's going back and forth between offense and defense. I think that a lot of people are using AI now to be more tricky,
Mm,
to make fall in love online, to write tricky emails and all of those things. I've definitely noticed an uptick in the number of emails I get, and they're more sophisticated. And you can use you can just use the information about someone online, right, to be tricky to them. And now an AI can collate it better and be even trickier. I think that there will be a race, just like, there's a lot of antivirus software. Eventually, there's going to be AI protection stuff. They just haven't caught up yet. I think that will catch up. So I think it's the shield hasn't caught up there to the trickiness. So the thing that keeps me up at night the most, more than that, is that there are a lot of people who think that AI is a fad. Maybe 70% of people think it's going to come and go, like average employees, regular people, and they're all going to lose their jobs because in 3 years, people who don't know how to use AI will be unemployable. Because imagine, simple scenario, you have two accountants you can hire. One of them goes, hey, I use spreadsheets and I use calculators. The other one goes, no, I'm old school. I just use a notebook. I do everything by hand with acrylic ink. You would never hire the second person because the other person's faster, right? That's the thing, is that speed is a major difference. AI can already make someone 40% faster. They just did a big study on that. 48% increase in speed. Who wouldn't want to make 40% more money or make the same money working 3 days a week instead of 5? That sounds amazing. About 40% of companies have said they want to add AI in the next year, but they don't know what that means. They just know they want it. So isn't a great time for opportunity, but it also means that there's going to always be a lot of good information and bad information. So those are the things that worry me. But I'm most worried about the common people, the workers who are my age or older, 40 or older, who go, oh, I'm not learning another new technology, thinking that it's optional, thinking that it's not a big deal, this will come and go, and then finding out that this technology makes you faster, and that's a big deal in any industry. So no one's going to hire an accountant who can do one task a day when you can have one who can do 10. So it's going to give a major advantage to people who learn it first. And that's the thing I worry about the most, is the people who try it once, it doesn't work, and say, oh, this doesn't really work, it's just a fad, everyone else is just talking. Because there's a lot of stuff. If you watch on YouTube videos, there's so many videos about, oh, you can make $500 a minute using AI. All those videos are distraction. People try those techniques, it doesn't work, and then they think it's all a fad. But that's just always that end of the market that's always kind of full of shenanigans. That's very distracting. So I most worry about people who don't take it seriously, wait too long to learn it, and then and same thing for small business owners. I don't think very many businesses can survive without using this tool, because everything is changing. Just like 20 years ago, everyone needed a website. Now, companies that don't use AI or AI services, they're just always going to be at a disadvantage.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because that was my concern for why I thought it was best to start a podcast and pivoting to Web3. Being retired and coming out of retirement, and I always say hanging around the earth as long as I've been here. Intel, I didn't understand it and I missed it. And there's a lot of things that took place that I didn't think was really going to stay or didn't understand. And the more I delved into blockchain and different areas, the more I realized, once I started studying the cases and uses and the success, might have been a downhill spiral in the beginning, but a lot of the success, I thought people really need to understand and know what's going on, and it's going to be here a while. Don't get left behind and have some success rates with it. So I'm really glad you mentioned that from the AI standpoint, with as much knowledge and skill sets that you have with it. So when you look at the different industries, are there some industries or nonprofits or different sectors that are more inclined to use AI and bring it into their processes than others? Are there some industries that are more advantageous for them to wrap into AI, or are they all about the same? No matter what, it's going to be everywhere with everybody all the time.
It's going to be everywhere within 3 years. We're in that this period right now where everyone claims their software has AI, every company claiming they're an AI company. And so it's a distraction. That will sort itself out within 6 months to a year, where we'll know the winners will survive and the fake AI companies will fade away. So mainly right now, companies who are doing any type of content generation, writing emails, creating social media posts, making videos, anything in those areas, writing books, writing scripts, all of that stuff, it's where AI is the strongest. So right now, any of those fields, if you do any of those things at your company, if your company does email, if your company does social media, then you need it for those areas. As far as like a small business, like a mechanic, right, where most of the work is done in the real world, not yet. The tools aren't there yet, but we're going to get to the point where you just point a webcam at an engine, right? And it scans everything and comes up with ideas for what's wrong. It helps you do the diagnostics. So those AIs are coming. They're just not there yet because that's kind of specialized, but it's just a matter of time. Just like it's only a matter of time until someone comes in to get a haircut and you just use an AI to show them different pictures of what their hair will look like with the different haircuts, right? Like that already exists, that technology. AI is just going to kind of bring it out into the world a little bit more. So it's going to really become a part of everyday life in a lot of different ways, just to add increases of efficiency, help people get done quicker. So it's just a question of adopting sooner or later. You can adopt right now. It's the, oh, AI is interesting phase. The next phase will be, you shouldn't, you need to learn AI. And the third phase will be, if you don't know AI, you're fired. So we kind of go through those three phases where at first something is considered cheating. So in the 70s, they came out with graphing calculators and everyone said, oh, how will kids ever learn math if they have calculators at school? That's cheating.
That's true.
Then it went to, okay, it's optional. We'll let them use it. And then it became mandatory, right? Like when I was in high school in the 90s, you had to have a graphing calculator or you couldn't take the class.
It feels so old.
Well, it goes through those three phases. So many tools have done that, right? In my age, right? It went from you're not allowed to have your phone at school to now they expect you to do research on it, right? You're not allowed to use Google. Now it went from you're not allowed to do it to you have to do it. So we go through, it's cheating, it's allowed, it's mandatory. And that's what's going to happen with AI. So we're in a phase right now where people think because it's not mandatory that's how it's going to stay. But I already know companies, I work with companies where they said to every employee, come back on Monday with a plan for how you're going to use AI to do your job better or faster, or don't come back on Monday.
Really?
So
already.
And that's not going to stop because there's no reason to have someone who's operating at 3/5 of someone else, right? And it's a conscious decision, right? ChatGPT is free. Perplexity is free. Claude is free. It's not as though these are paid tools. And the paid version is $20 a month, right? Even the paid version, not that expensive. And it's unlimited. There's no limit to how many questions or things you can do. So everyone who is making excuses, it's really hard to say, oh, I didn't have time to learn this free tool, right? That will make me 40% more valuable. Already, they've done some studies. There are people who are getting, when they get a raise, the raise is 73% higher if you have AI skills right now already. And there's some positions where actually someone who knows the exact same thing but knows AI as well is getting paid 46% more already. That's in non-tech fields. So if you want to make more money, if you want to secure your future as an employee, or if you want to start your own company, it doesn't matter. This is one of those tools that's just going to become ubiquitous. It's like those people, even in the 90s, some people are like, oh, this internet's a fad. People get bored of it. Now, that was true of 3D, right? I have a friend who bought a 3D TV 10 years ago, and I was like, I felt really bad because when's the last time there's like one 3D movie every 10 years, right? Like, because no one wants to sit on the couch wearing goggles next to their family because you're there but not together. That doesn't sound fun to me.
Right.
So there's certain technologies that don't work, but this is the technology that does work and it's here to stay. We're going to go through those phases where eventually people who don't believe in AI will be seen the same way we see flat earthers. We're going to go, how are you still here?
How are you functioning? Right. So check this out. In ChatGPT, I recently learned about all the different plugins. And the plugins seem to really add to ChatGPT. Are there other AIs with plugins? How did the plugin world, do you know how that kind of came to be? I thought that was a really good idea. I mean, it seems like there's a plugin for everything.
So OpenAI has the ability to create amazing tools with horrible implementation. So they sat down and said, let's make a plugin like a store, right? Which is awesome. Every plugin is free. And then someone said, how should we organize it? And the owner goes, well, what about alphabetically? Let's do what the Yellow Pages did in the 1800s. So it's not organized by category. There are no categories for plugins. You get to describe your plugin with one sentence. And when someone searches, if they search by your company name, your plugin won't show up. So it's only plugin title in that one sentence. You're not allowed to have any more description. The link, you're allowed to have one little link icon. It has to go to your terms and conditions page. It can't even go to a useful page, right? Like I care about someone's terms and conditions. How about telling me what the plugin does? So out of the plugins, of which there are a little over 1,000, it might be up to 1,200 right now. Because I was just looking. They're organized in blocks of 8 alphabetically. So there's a ton of plugins. Just like AAA came around because they want to be at the front of the yellow pages, there's a lot of Aaron this and Aardvark that because it's the front. And that should tell them that what they've done is a real dummy move, like to just not have any organization, no categorization, and there's no way to do it. There's actually no up-to-date database that even organizes the plugins. So plugins, I learned about plugins through word of mouth. We've turned to 1800s technology for finding out which plugins are good, which is someone whispers it to someone who whispers it to me. So they have this dichotomy where it's great tools with bad implementation constantly. So they're the only ones with plugins right now. And I don't know that that will last. I don't know that it's necessary. I use about 5 or 6 plugins out of the 1,000. I only know what 15 of the plugins even do. There are so many plugins that aren't really useful and are distractions. And because there's no rating of plugins, there's no reviews of plugins, you're not allowed to do anything that will be useful. It's literally just a book with plugins listed alphabetically or listed by new. So recent plugins, and so it's really a challenge. There's a couple that I use. I use one to watch YouTube videos so I can have it scan a YouTube and give me data. I use one to give it internet access. I use another one that does research, but the research is limited to up to 6 weeks ago. So I use it for SEO type stuff like keyword research. So I do have a couple of plugins that I use quite a bit. I have one that lets it read a PDF. So I can have it look at a whole book and give me feedback. Those are the main ones that I use. And mostly the implementation is so poor that there's some amazing plugins that are just hidden because of the way they've organized it. There's no room for screenshots of what the plugin does, or you're not allowed to explain it. It's really hard in one sentence to say what your plugin does. And if you don't have the right keywords, when I search, I won't find it. So that's one of the challenges that will hopefully work itself out. There are a lot of opportunities for other companies to jump into place, but it really does add a lot of power to ChatGPT. And it's a really cool feature.
So I'm really glad I asked that question. I only learned it recently. And like you said, if somebody didn't tell me, I didn't understand what they were and I wouldn't know them to go in there. And then once we started playing around with it, then I said, oh, so there's about 8 of them that I find valuable, but I haven't gotten that far into it either. And I didn't see any other AI using the plugins. So now I'm curious, before we really get into where we can locate you and your information and everything. So what would you like to see happen? What's your wish list? I always ask this question because you get really good responses with this. What isn't happening that you wish would happen? What's your wish list for AI?
I think the thing that I like and is the open source AIs. A lot of people are a little unaware that they exist, that you can actually get really powerful AIs completely for free that you can run on your computer and have total control. It's not public. It's not shared. Your data is secure. There's a lack of awareness. So there's a campaign right now by the big AI companies to talk about AI legislation. They're like, oh, we need to work. The companies that are putting out AI are like, oh, we need to worry about the dangers of AI. What they're up to is they want to pass laws. I'm sure this is where this is going. This is, oh, only big corporations should be allowed to make AIs to make sure they're safe, like stuff like that. We have to put in these safeguards. So what happened about 4 months ago, these 2 scientists wrote a big white paper explaining why no open source AI would ever be able to beat ChatGPT because it's a big company with billions of dollars. And 2 weeks later, an open source AI beat ChatGPT in every single metric. So it's the fastest I've ever seen someone go from writing a paper to have to eat the paper, like so quick, so quickly. It's like predicting no one would run the 4-minute mile and a week later someone does it. It was that bad. And it beat ChatGPT 3.5, not the current version of ChatGPT, but the 6-month-old version, which is still amazing for something that's completely free, completely open source, created by a community. So there are some amazing things happening in that space. They're happening so fast that it's overwhelming because every day, at least one new AI comes out in the open source world. So I think hopefully that's the future I look forward to where it's not controlled by big companies. It's controlled by people. You can decide which version you want to have. There are uncensored AIs and censored AIs. So one of the things I ran into So I was working on a romance novel and it wouldn't write the naughty bits. And my wife was like, well, what's the point? That's the only part I like to read because she likes romance novels. And I was like, so that's the first time I ran into it, censorship. And I like an AI that doesn't have a thumb on the scale. Like you can figure out the politics and religious beliefs and all of that stuff of the people working open AI because they program it in there. And some people, sometimes you just don't want a thumb on the scale. For most of my work, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If you're writing scripts, like there are certain things. So I was working on I'll give you an example. I was working on a book and it wouldn't let a woman be the villain of a romance novel.
Really?
And I was like, ChatGPT, are you crazy? How the hero is a woman, the second, like all the characters in this book, other than love interest, are women. And it was like, it gave me a whole spiel. I was like, no, you're not paying attention. This book passes the Bechdel test. And then once I explained it, it let me finish. But I was like, this is very silly. Like it was misunderstanding. And I was like, no, it's like it was like the fifth book in the series. I was like, we need to have a new villain. And I had to explain it. And I was like, that's the kind of stuff that I find like it's a little bit of the silliness. You can't say that a movie or book can never have a female villain. Well, that means lady actresses won't get those jobs, right? Like, that's not good. So that was perspective on that one. And that's the kind of stuff where it makes sense to be like, you know what? I just want an AI that I can choose how to program it to tell it what's okay, what's not, kind of my personalization of it. So I think that's the future. I think open source AI is the good future where we don't put it in the hands of multi-billion-dollar corporations. Microsoft owns most of OpenAI or 49% of it. They don't really need to get more power. So there's a lot of good happening in OpenAI. I think that's the future that I hope is the future. That's what I look forward to, that people start to become aware that ChatGPT is just the beginning. And also what open source AI does is put a crippling downward pressure on the cost. It means that's why ChatGPT is $20 a month, because if it was $100 a month, everyone would go to open source, right? Because it's free. So that's really what's happening, is that's why companies right now can really lower their costs. They can really cut their AI costs to the bone. They can really cut their software costs because there's a downward pressure price-wise on the market, which is nice for the consumer and nice for the company that's using other companies' tools.
Wow. That is so insightful. Thank you. One last question. I said that last time, but one last question. In blockchain as a service, there's companies that develop in blockchain as a service. Is there a AI as a service? Companies like that?
Yes.
Oh, really?
There's a couple of ways it happens. There's one is where you help a company set up their AI and you kind of set up the processes and kind of come in like an agency or a consultant and help them on a part-time basis, right? You come in, set their systems, you're not there full-time. That's one type of thing as a service. There are companies that are building custom AI tools for companies who are doing custom integrations. One of the problems right now, and this is something I don't like, is that a lot of computer programmers and mathematicians and nerds are becoming AI consultants. And the last thing you want to do as a company is bring in a programmer, because a programmer sees the solution to every problem is custom programming. And the worst thing you can do right now when software is changing as quickly as it is build a custom piece of software that in 6 weeks will be obsolete, right? And so you have to bring the person back and this cost skyrocket and you created a huge problem for yourself. So right now is definitely the best time to leverage other people's software and tools, not to build in anything custom, not to do any of those things right now, just because of the changes are happening so quickly that you're building on an API, you're building on features that become irrelevant within weeks instead of years. So the cycle of growth is so fast right now. Every day, new things happen, every day, new software. So that's the most important thing. So there definitely is software as a service happening in a lot of places. I've definitely built a couple pieces of software that I share with my clients to help them do things a little bit quicker. But the most important thing is to really be very cautious with how you invest in AI. There's some very expensive tools that do very worthless things. And so companies it's just that time. It's just like last year when people were buying a lot of blockchain things that they thought would be valuable, and they've all lost their value this year because it's not the usefulness, right? You get distracted by the flash. So it's the same thing that happens whenever a market explodes. You get a lot of distractions, which are not useful. And the important thing is to think, is this tool really useful? And is this the best tool for this process? And is there a cheaper version of this tool? any AI tool that's expensive, that's a massive red flag. That's a very suspicious sign because AI is cheap, right? Unlimited AI tools are in the $20 range. So if someone's like, oh, this AI, it's like $3,000, $5,000, $10 a month, $10,000 a month, that should be a massive warning sign to you that something's wrong, because the only reason they're charging huge numbers is because if they're messing with one area, they're probably messing with the other areas.
Boy, you've given us a lot of huge nuggets. So, with all that said, I know I'm going to want to have you back in the future. But until then, you've got books, you've got a lot of education, a lot of talent. What do you want to share with us on how we can reach you, connect with you, or if you want to talk about any one of your books in AI or what we should know about them from you personally? I'd like you to go ahead and share that with our listeners because I'm sure they enjoyed this episode.
The best place to go is to servenomaster.com one. That's ONE, the number one. And I have a free gift there, which explains my master prompt, the one I was talking to you about, where it's like question and then what I get that ultimate result. I really explain it there in great detail. It's a free gift that I was just working on earlier today for your audience. And that's the best place to go. If you Google Serve No Master, if you can't remember the link, every result is me. For the top 100 results, that's as far as I checked. And yes, I have a book on Amazon called ChatGPT Profits. But if you go to servenomaster.com/one, that's where all the information is there. I'll send you the guide and then links to all my other stuff in an email once you download that PDF. So that's really the best place to start.
Oh, thank you so much. And to my listeners, I hope you enjoyed Jonathan Green. And this is Donna Mitchell, host of Pivoting to Web3. And you can go to my podcast page, which is Pivoting to Web3 Podcast, and download, share, and give some insight or some reviews and what you think. But this is an outstanding episode, and I'm really glad we had Jonathan. Have a nice day. Thanks for listening to Pivoting to Web3 at pivotingtoweb3.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so that it gets to you with every episode that comes out. We have lots of great opportunities, limitations, and downward spirals being revealed by our guests. And thank you in advance for all your reviews and comments. I appreciate you so much. I look forward to serving you in the next week's episode.